session is about meeting really funding requirements for monthly evidence and the review process. This session is aimed at the learner, the employer and the assessor to review the types of things that we should be putting in the funding paperwork. So the aim of this session really is to understand monthly evidence for the colleges and then to understand the review process for the college. Now what I've done is I've put slides in between each one, so just skip to the section that's relevant to your college. Okay. So the college we're looking at is Bourneville and what they're looking for within evidence of learning. So Bourneville College wish to have a progress review form, and in here you can see we need to put the learner's name, date of birth, assessor, the date, the start times and end times, where they work and the qualification. You need to be meeting all parts of the framework, so that's your main aim workbook, your technical certificate workbook and your functional skills, which is your BKSB, and your downloaded support packs and online classrooms, etc., trying to get you ready. Here we would list what you've completed to date and what units we're assessing at the moment. So hopefully you should have completed your ERR within the first month, and then if you're working towards these workbooks, any units that you've completed with your assessor. Now here we should be keeping an eye on the end date of the qualification, and here an estimate, really, the best guess of how much we think you've got done in those last 4 weeks. What we want to know is, what have you done in the last 4 weeks? So the minimum you should be doing is definitely distance learning, because you've got all your resources online. You may have had discussions with your assessor, so you may have had professional discussions. They may have done observations with you or collected witness testimonies. If you're doing workbooks, then hopefully you've been doing assignments in your workbooks as well. Finally, if you've been uploading evidence to your portfolio, you've been doing that one as well. So there's a fair bit there that we can write. The assessor and your tutor will write a comment in here, and their comment is about the work that you have been doing over the last 4 weeks. And they'll use a variety and a range of ways of writing that. So they can log into your BKSB to see if you've undertaken your initial and diagnostics. They've obviously got the workbooks that you've been completing for functional skills to say that you've been upskilling yourself, or maybe you've been taking some practice tests. They've got the evidence from the workbooks that you've been emailing them to make their judgment against, and also they will have the results from the online classrooms that you're attending. Here you should have a discussion with your assessor about the tasks that you need to be getting on with for the next 4 weeks. So it may be complete 2 of the units within your technical certificate book and 1 unit within your main aim. And there they'll obviously give you target dates when they want that completed by. Down here is where you, the learner, needs to write your comment. And your comment is how you feel you're progressing across your apprenticeship. And remember, your apprenticeship isn't just one thing, it is a combination of things. And to remind you, the things that you really should be talking about in there is on your info page, isn't it? No. Yeah. So when you're answering that, when you're answering, when you're answering how you're getting on there, I'm just going to add another page in because I think it'll be useful to share my computer with you at this point. So I'm just sharing computer. What might be useful is if you've got this in front of you, because then you can talk about each part. So there you can say, I've done this towards my functional skills, I've done this towards my ERR, I've done this towards my main aim, I've done this towards my technical certificate, and these are the bits that I've done towards my personal learning and thinking skills. Equally, if you've attended any of these sessions, the webinars, we can add that in as well. So you can see how important it is for you to have an understanding of your apprenticeship and what you're doing and how you're progressing. You sign, pop your date there, and your assessor will then sign and pop there, and the next time they're going to contact you there. They'll make a decision if you're on track, yes or no, and they'll give you a risk rating. If you're at a low risk, it means you're progressing well and there's no problems. Medium risk means there's been a few hiccups. You could go either way. You could pull it back, or you might slip and be worse. And then obviously a high risk means they feel that you may not achieve your award in time. So that's the 4 weekly review. Then what you have, being the Bourneville learner, you then have your quarterly review. So same thing, filling in all of those boxes there and there. Your rate, how you're getting along against each of these judgments. So there's your key there, and you just dot how you feel you're getting on. Here, you're going to talk about then the progress since your last review. So again, what have you achieved in your main aim? How many units have you got done? What have you been achieving in your technical certificate? What have you got achieved? Here, have you completed your ERR? How are you getting on with your personal learning and thinking skills? And how's the functional skills progressing? On the second page, we're going to look at the review with actions to complete. So anything that you had planned for here in your last review, how are we getting on with those there? The last things we want to know is issues around safeguarding, health and safety, equality and diversity. Now, you may be given a question to answer around safeguarding, health and safety, or equality and diversity. Or alternatively, what is seen as excellent practice is if you have had any issues against any of those, to discuss those with your assessor and then comment there. Or alternatively, give working examples of how you apply those within your workplace. If you've started and by now within 4 weeks, and especially at the point of a learning review, you should have completed your evidence 1, which is about learner safeguarding, so you should have a good understanding of that. Health and safety, which is your Be Safe workbook, so you should have a good understanding about that, and your E&D. So you'd have had feedback on that by now as well. If you haven't, then you're already behind on target. The person reviewing you will then obviously write a comment in there and whether or not the review's been completed at the correct time. You, the learner, needs to write something in there, and again, that's based on the things that you're doing to progress. And here, self-directive activities, there's loads of activities we put there for you. that you can comment on. And here, the learner gets to, the employer grades us the same as what they have at the top and writes a comment there on how you're achieving. It's really important that if you're the assessor, that you're engaging with the employer so they understand. And if you're the learner, saying to your manager the amount of things that you're doing as well. Because if you don't tell your employer what you're doing, how's the employer going to be able to contribute towards that process? So that's the Bourneville process. If you're happy with that, play this back and then obviously review it, and you can obviously finish this session now, so thanks for watching. Moving forward then, if you're not a Bourneville learner, you're a Leeds College learner, we'll now cover what they want from you, because theirs is slightly different. So Leeds require a learning plan every week. So in here we put your name, who the assessor is, qualification, the date, the number, and that number really should run in line with the schemes of work and session plans. Step up, or whoever the partner is, and then the time. In here we would list the learning assessment activities that have been carried out in this session. Now, if you've got the scheme of work, you can just simply copy that in there. Action set, again, are the activities you set in the scheme of work. And then here, what have you planned for next session in the scheme of work and the session? So they can just go in there. And there you should be able to comment what they've done today. Exactly the same for the technical certificate. What units are they going to cover in the learning outcomes? How are they going to achieve them? And what they've got planned for next time. Here, same for functional skills. Again, BKSB, practice tests, workbooks, online classroom, feedback against the work that's submitted. You know, if you're emailing, are you giving feedback against emails? Are you getting your learners to write to you? If you're a learner, are you writing to your assessors so they can check your spelling? And again, if you're sending work, are you sending work that's free from errors and things like that? If you're not, then we need to be commenting on that there. We're obviously going to tell you, again, what actions you should be completing, and it's useful to ask your assessor for the scheme of work so you can see what you're doing and when you're doing it, and then here, what is it you're going to be doing next time round. Exactly the same for ERR. Now, ERR should be completed within the first month with Leeds. Your functional skills should be within 6 months, and your technical certificate within 9. Off-the-job training is going to be all of the classroom stuff that you're doing. So any of the webinars that you're doing, any of the distant contact stuff you're having with your assessor, and then on-the-job training is going to be things, what are you doing with your employer? Have you had any work-based training? Has the assessor come out and conducted any of their observations? Have you done any of the assessments with them? Are you on target? So that's your learner development plan that you've agreed with your assessor. And when's the next visit going to take place? Learner signs, you sign. Now, Leeds require an 8-weekly review process. So name, provider's name, qualification, you need to write the full name and the level, who the assessor is, the date, and the number of the progress. Here, they want to know the learning. So, summarise learning to date. So, if you've been reading stuff, working towards your learning outcomes from your main aims, you can list what the learning outcomes are there. Here, you can agree the action plans to continue that and progress that forward, and dates when you're going to have that done, and if there's anything to be done, who's going to do it. For the technical certificate, same thing. What learning have you done towards your technical certificate? So it might be, I've completed my first unit in my e-classrooms. I've emailed my work to the assessor. And then they're the discussions that the assessor's going to have with you there. Work to be achieved, again, things to move you forward can go in there. Dates that you're going to do that by, and then obviously who's going to do what. So it might be the fact that you've submitted work and you're waiting for feedback, so the assessor may be responsible there. Functional skills, again, English, Maths and ICT. It's important that we discuss those, even if you're not taking ICT, it's seen as good practice anyway to be including it, because it's all about upskilling you. So in there, have you done your BKSB assessments? Have you emailed any work to your assessor showing IT via emailing? Have you typed your documents up showing English and typing? Have you done any of the distance learning modules? If you have, pop them in there, discuss it with your assessor, and pop some targets, dates, and who's responsible for them in there. ERR again, same thing. Have you completed the e-classroom? So in there it would be, I've completed Unit 1 and the outcomes that I've achieved are, and you just list the outcomes that you've achieved, and then how did you achieve them? Did you complete the workbook, have a discussion, and show some evidence? If you haven't yet finished that, you should have by the review time, because it's 8 weeks. So in there then you do your targets. Overall, try and work out your percentages for main aim, tech cert, English, Maths and ICT. That's why you got the 3 in there, and obviously your ERR. The second document is around any additional support. So is there anything additional we've done for you since your last review, or is there anything identified? So is it the fact that we need to undertake any additional assessments? Have you done your learning styles? Do we need to change anything that we're doing? Are you finding it easy or difficult? Do we need to change the way that we're delivering it? So that goes in there. In here, it clearly asks you detail any incidences that you are aware of since your last review regarding health and safety, safeguarding, and E&D. So in there, you could talk about the fact that you take regular breaks when you're studying, so you're keeping yourself safe at work, health and safety. Or safeguarding, you could comment on the fact that you're aware of your rights as a learner and you know, keeping your mental health balanced and things like that. So if you're struggling, you've had a discussion with your assessor. It may be the fact that your assessor asks you a question to complete that if you've no issues. And again, the same for equality and diversity. Are we meeting your needs as a learner? Do you feel involved within the process, and are we getting that right? Amendments really would be, so if we're not getting it right, what do we need to change to get it right, and what do we need to update it in agreements? The learner then, you obviously need to comment in here, and comment is about the whole experience. So, you know, how are you progressing with your main aim? How are you progressing with your technical certificate? How are you progressing with your ERR? How are you progressing with your functional skills? So it's not I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm this or that. It's what you're doing and how you're progressing with your qualification. The assess, you then sign and date. The employer will then have to comment, and again, it's progression that they need to understand how you're progressing as well. So when you're completing things, let your employer know. When you're doing stuff in your own time, say to your employer, oh, I just thought I'd let you know I've completed this unit now. So when the assessor talks to the employer, the assessor can fully understand that you've got that relationship with your employer and your employer supporting you as well. So when it comes to the review, they're not saying, oh, I don't know what they're up to. So they should be aware. So if you know that your assessor's doing a learner review with you, then let your employer know, and why not just write some notes down for your employer to say, well, look, Mr. Manager, this is what I've done, or show them, log on to your portfolio and show them, log on to your e-classroom and show them how far you are through. Celebrate and be proud of the work that you've achieved to date. Finally, the assessor will then comment on everything else. They'll obviously then go through and go, well, how have you done? Have you achieved everything? And they'll obviously give you their feedback there. So, if you're a Leeds learner, you can obviously finish this session. Thanks for watching. Finally, then, if we've got it right, the last one should be a Serco learner. So if you're with Serco, we obviously need you to understand your monthly evidence and the 8 weekly reviews. So for Serco, you need to be completing your action plans. So your action plans are pop your name in there and your workplace there. What is it we want you to do? Who's going to do it? When are you going to do it? And it then gets signed off there as completed. At the bottom then, obviously you need to have a copy of what you've agreed, and it's signed and dated once you've agreed what you've agreed. So that's kind of your action plan, really. It's like a mini assessment plan of what it is you're doing. So that needs to be signed off on a monthly basis to ensure that you are actually on target and that you are in learning and you are progressing. What we've then got for you is your progress review. I'm hoping that I updated that. I'm just looking for it. There's a possibility I haven't updated that one. So give me a second and we'll just have a look for that now. There it is. Okay, so if you're a Serco learner, we pop your name, your apprenticeship, our name, where you're studying, who your QA is, the managers, the completion date, the date that you're having your next review, this date, and the start date. So your next review date should be 8 weeks from there. In here, we will list the units that you're working towards in your main aim there. We'll also work out a rough percentage of how far through you are of each of the units. So it's important that you are working towards your qualification in a wider manner. Here, we'll obviously the percentages of the amount of work you've done towards your technical certificate. Again, if we're doing a review already, ERR should be completed. Personal learning thinking should be finished at the end. But again, talk about ongoing, so you should be completing that bit by bit. Application number, obviously there's no portfolio of evidence anymore, but in here it's useful to write BKSB results if you've done a practice test and if you've completed any workbooks. Pop them in there in the discussion, and then if you've done the test, we can sign that off there. So we'll do the same for English, Maths and ICT. Activities that you've done since your last review, including any work training activities. So in there, we need to know, how much have you been doing by yourself? Have you done any of the webinars? Have you filled out any of the workbooks? Have you done your e-classroom? Great. But what also have you been doing? Have you done any training at work? Have you learnt anything new at work? That can be added in there. Any additional support required, we can add in there. So if you've had extra one-to-one support with your assessor or any additional remote visits, they can go in there. We need to check your understanding of health and safety awareness, so we can do that by asking you a question and recording your answer in there. Or alternatively, you could have a discussion and find out if you've had any accidents or anything at work that we need to report on there. Same for equality and diversity, and same for safeguarding. Now, they should be the documents that you first filled out within the first 4 to 8 weeks of your apprenticeship anyway, so you should now have a good understanding of E&D and safeguarding. Here, we need to list any of the action plans that you need to do, and if there's anything else we need to add, we can use that action plan you've just seen. Again, so here it should be, we'd like you to progress towards the next unit in your technical certificate, duties of care, for example. This is unit number, whatever it is, when you're going to do it, and when you're going to do it. So that's a bit of a detailed plan. In here, we would get any feedback from your manager. So we'd ask them how they feel you're progressing and what support they've given you towards your apprenticeship. We would then give you our feedback and then ask you we would then tell you how we feel you're progressing towards and any of your comments. And finally, you would be the last person to give feedback, and in there you would write how you're progressing and how you feel you're being supported. Between the assessor and you can agree where you sit on your risk rating. Obviously, if you come out a medium risk or a high risk, the quality assurance manager should know about this, and we can obviously support you in getting back on target. Once everything's been done, you can sign and print. Your manager can sign and print, and the assessor will sign and print, and just pop the dates in there for when the review took place. Here it then says, a copy to be given to learner and manager and supervisor, original to be kept with the assessor in the learner file and be scanned to one file or the online portfolio. So there's a fair bit there that we covered. No, you don't need to know about invoices and payments. So the whole point of the session was to understand about monthly evidence for your colleges and understand about the review process. If you have any further questions regarding the review process or evidence that needs to be supplied, then by all means please email me at stephen@educations.co.uk or alternatively call your assessor. Thank you for watching this session. Hopefully you found it beneficial. By all means go online and look at the other how-to videos to support you.